Hello, hope you all are doing really well. Welcome back to Detox. I'm Deepthi. Today we are going to talk about outlining. To be honest, this is the biggest mistake I did when I started writing, which is I did not have an outline in hand. I had the idea of the plot, I had a couple of points written here and there, and I started writing, and that eventually came to an end within a couple of days. Not to mention, I haven't completed even one chapter before that. To my defense, I didn't know that there is something called outline existed before that. I thought writers would just write their stories, and the stories, the plots, the characters would just come to them, I believed. How stupid of me. But let me tell you that it's very essential to have an outline. Having said that, outlining is a process where you visualize your story and putting your random thoughts on your ideas into a streamlined way, which helps to begin the writing process. So there are strategic ways to outline, which I am going to tell you. But before that, it's very essential for you to understand what kind of a writer you are and whether you would need an outline or not. Are there types of writers, you ask? Let me tell you. There are three types. Number one is pantser. Pantsers are writers who do not plan at all. Instead, they prefer to go by the flow. But remember, they will either have the plot or the characters very strong in their mind, which will drive the story ahead. Number two are plotters. These are the writers who write each and every detail of their story. The character's arc, the plot, any deviations, and sometimes you will be surprised to know the level of details they will put down on their planning. And the third type is plantsers. These are writers who plan very little in their books, but they're very good at the natural flow of words or the natural cognitive thinking that little planning will go way ahead for them. And it's only after some time that I realized that I belong to plotter. An outline is very essential for me. And surprisingly, if I look back, that is how I studied in my academics. I need all the headings or topics of whatever I'm going to write in the exam. And without that, I tend to get lost while answering. And the way you study can also help you in finding out what kind of writer you are. Perhaps. Now, getting to the methods of outlining, I suggest you do a 3-act structure of your story before outlining, and I have made a video on it. If you haven't watched it yet, I will link that in the description. The first method is called snowflake method. As the name suggests, this method is building the story step by step from the minimum, which is you have a one-liner of your story, and the next step is to write your story into 3 paragraphs. This can be based on the 3-act story structure. And the third step is to specify the characters and plots in these 3 paragraphs. In this phase, you can get into details and do a 2 to 3 pages of each paragraph. And the fourth step is to have a summary for each and every chapter, adding in details if necessary or additional characters or plots if necessary. And the fifth step is to find if your characters need any backstories and write them accordingly. If you prefer, you can go further on, like adding in the details of the place, the time, the season, things as such. But these 5 steps would be ideal for any kind of a story. Second method is called the outline guide. In this method, just imagine a 100% timeline or a bar which represents your story. Any ideal story would have the inciting incident going at the 10%. And at 20%, you would write what the characters would try differently or do differently in order to tackle whatever was established in the inciting incident. And at 50%, a victory or a defeat of whatever you have tried in the 20% zone is established. And it's over here at the 50% is what you will decide if the problem still exists or not. Precisely, the problem should exist still, or you should add up new problems to it. And at 75% is where you would put those plots which would defeat the protagonist to rock bottom, and it should be very hard to believe that they would recover. And 80 to 85% is where you let your characters find a very potential solution. And obviously, 100% is the happy ending. So if you put these tags on across the 100% timeline and fill in the gaps in between, you would eventually get to the outline of your story. Well, there is another way, and this might be confusing to people who are an absolute plotters, which is you write the chapters which are very strong and certain in your head and do the reverse engineering to the 50% of the story or even to the inciting incident. Some people very certainly know the ending and they write the climax first and then they do the reverse engineering based on the character arcs. This might get confusing if you're not really good at handling different situations. or precisely if you're not a multitasker. Just imagine the authors of the Harry Potter or the Lord of the Rings. It would have been highly impossible to write those kind of stories without definite outline. Honestly, putting down word by word literally to get your story into a shape is a very personal process. And that experience is really special because to a writer, that is the most exciting part. And you will want that to happen without any hurdles. And that's it. I hope this video was helpful. Keep reading, keep writing, and get those cognitive forces flowing. Until I see you next time. Bye.